my story that are really typical, and then there are aspects of my story that are atypical. And I'm gonna
come out and represent such a positive, healthy role model of recovery.
We have what we call the Alliance in Billings, which is the 3 major healthcare providers.
The day when he's really alert and can focus on his work. And then somebody this morning talked
into getting the world a better place. And it's both true, because the professionals actually need the resources, the payments.
Some of the policies that we are driving are targeting those kinds of issues, but it's not like it's
analogy as opposed to an electrical line analogy, the circuitry and learning.
I am very honored as Vice Chairperson of Montana NAMI to introduce to you Dr. Ken Duckworth. Dr. Duckworth is the Medical Director of National NAMI Organization, and he comes to us very well prepared as he is triple certified in both adult and child and adolescent psychiatry as well as forensic psychiatry. He graduated with honors from my alma mater, University of Michigan, go U of M, and from Temple University Medical School. He has received numerous awards from Massachusetts Psychiatric Society, from Harvard Medical School, from the American Psychiatric Association, and from Temple University School of Medicine. And he has also received the Ken and Ronna Purdy Award for his work to combat stigma. Dr. Duckworth is presently an assistant professor at Harvard University Medical School. He also serves as a school consultant. He has a private practice, and he does community mental health work in Boston. And in his spare time, he provides teleconferences on child and adult mental health issues. Without further ado, I introduce Dr. Ken Duckworth.
Thank you. That was very nice. Many of those things were true. It's beautiful to be here. I do love Montana NAMI. I was here a few years ago. I think Montana NAMI is a really fabulous organization, and I've come to know the Mihelishes quite well over time through their advocacy and work, and it's a privilege to be here to talk with you about something that I'm not an expert about. This is very important. So I have about 5 things I'm really into and really good at. Yeah, Sandy and Gary asked me to speak about none of those things. I just want to make that really clear. A few things in this little life I'm actually considered an expert on. And I said, well, can I do A? No. Can I do B? No. C? No. D? No. Don't tell me you don't want me to do E either. No, we're not interested in that. We want you to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder, because those are 2 things that National NAMI has taken on this year as part of the areas that they're taking an interest in. And I said, well, gee, one of my other jobs is to translate science, and the calls on Friday are free. And one of the things I cooked up, have any of you heard those calls? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Woohoo! You guys are all right. Free breakfast burrito for all those people, Gary, please. Stat breakfast burrito, stat. One of the things I did on that is I noticed that I kept going and hanging out with all these smart expert types, right? But I know that the families and the consumers, the families, the individuals living with the illnesses are doing all the heavy lifting. So I had this thought as I became National NAMI's medical director, why don't I get these experts to give time to the real team? And so basically that's what the Friday calls are. So I have the most active researchers, some of the best thinkers, some of the best teachers. Everybody has said yes to me that I've ever asked, because everyone loves NAMI. all professionals love NAMI. It's really true. Without NAMI, they can't do a lot of their work. Because if they ask for better services, more money, it looks like shameless self-interest. If NAMI asks for better services, it looks like you're loving someone into getting the world a better place. And it's both true, because the professionals actually need the resources, the payment structure, the better ways to design things to get things done. But without the push from the individuals who have these conditions and the family members, nothing ever gets done. Look at assertive community treatment, which I'm an expert on. Don't want to talk about that. No interest in that topic. Look at parity, which I've done some work with NAMI on. Not an expert on that, but they did not want me to talk about parity. But assertive community treatment, and Montana has 5 teams, correct? Amazingly fabulous development for a state that's not that big and not that wealthy. It's a beautiful development. So this is directly a result, I'm sure, of the advocacy that you're doing to get that intervention. It's not perfect, and there's not enough of them, but that's a lot of teams considering that I live in Massachusetts. We think we're God's gift to everything in Massachusetts. I mean, holy cow, don't get me started. If we don't invent something, we don't want to hear about it. So assertive community treatment. See, I am going to talk about some of my expert topics, even though they don't want me to talk about that. I'm going to come to these other things. Basically, we have 14 teams in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has 6 million people, and it's the 3rd wealthiest state in America. And those teams were put together because I was the state medical director, and I said, let's develop some PAC teams. But see, I came from the Midwest, as my introduction opined. Assertive community treatment was invented in Wisconsin. So you had to have a commissioner from Ohio, an assistant commissioner from Indiana, and a guy from Michigan to say, maybe somebody outside of Boston has had one good idea. And so basically 3 of us who knew that there were bright people west of Dedham, which is a little town 2 miles away from Boston. Like the idea is that after Dedham, the whole thing rolls off the plate. So anyway, so here you are in Montana. You have 5 assertive community treatment teams. And that's directly due to advocacy. And so I do congratulate you for that one example. So I'm not going to be talking about any of the things that I'm an expert on. So I want to thank Gary and Sandy because I've now learned about something that I have to write about anyway. All those brochures you see out there, which you're welcome to take, I write those. That's part of my job for NAMI. The best job I ever had. I have to write one on borderline personality disorder, which actually is in the can on somebody else's desk. Been sitting there for a long time, actually, and on PTSD. So this was a great opportunity for me to review all the science and all the literature and to try to get my mind around how I would write a good brochure on this topic. So we're going to talk about trauma. And we're going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, but we're not only going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going to do a little theater. See, when I've never given a talk before, I don't have PowerPoints, I don't have all my great jokes, I don't have all the things, all the things that, like for a doctor, showing up with no PowerPoint, it's like that dream you have when you're naked in front of an audience. It's a lot like that, I'll tell you. It's a lot like that. It's, whoa, no PowerPoints, no DVD, nothing. So what is interesting to me is that my field of psychiatry is starting to figure out that traumatic experiences actually matter to people. That somehow we had gotten kind of symptom focused in my line of work, and we forgot both the person, we forgot the neck, which connects to the body, and we forgot the fact that very difficult experiences not only have meaning for people, which is what my field has been interested in, but actually can carry forward into the current life. And so there's more of a sensitivity about trauma. Let me give you an example of how trauma sensitivity is coming along. In 1988, the American Psychiatric Association said restraint and seclusion is a good treatment for people who want it. It can really be handy in stopping difficult behaviors and basically bring it on. 20 years later now, we've come to understand that most people who have a psychiatric illness experienced trauma in their life at some point. It does not mean it's anybody's fault. But if you ask people, have you been traumatized by something in your life? A lot of people who are in this room would probably say yes. I won't ask you to volunteer because that's kind of a personal question. But a lot of people would say yes to that. What's interesting is you put a person who's out of control or having difficulty regulating themselves or their emotions or they're in a rage in restraint or seclusion, what does it do? It re-traumatizes them. Has a very profound psychological effect. Again, I had no interest in this at all. When I became the state medical director, I went to a conference of other state medical directors. They were only interested in the reduction of restraint and seclusion. I got there at exactly the right moment. A lot of my life has just been stumbling onto really interesting people and then trying to translate it. I go back to Massachusetts as the state medical director, and a nurse comes up to me and says, "Ken, you know, we just had a kid die in restraints." And I thought, wow, you're kidding me, right? A kid? Why would a kid need to be in restraints? So what they were talked about in the state medical director convention was the whole idea of not using restraint and seclusion for adults. But I was a child person, and I see children there's 4 criteria for childhood. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Don't know much, can't control their emotions, don't like vegetables, and they're short. Those are the 4 psychiatric criteria for children. Don't know much, can't control their emotions, don't like vegetables, and they're short. If you have all 4 of those features, you're often a child, right? It's a high correlation with child. So I did child and adolescent training, and I got board certified, and I did schoolwork, and I've worked with kids, and I thought, wait a second, kids are incredibly sensitive to how they're treated. And if they were restrained or secluded, not only could one person die once in a while, about 300 people a year die in restraints and seclusion across the country, just so you know. That number is coming down because of the work of the state medical directors. So basically, I got interested in this whole thing because I was concerned about the trauma aspect of what it was like to be put in restraint and seclusion. One of the first things I do is I met with the union people, and I said, listen, if we're going to try to reduce the rate of trauma to people that we're serving, I want you to not do restraint and seclusion, or if you feel that you still have to, I would like all the people who train in the psychiatric hospitals to be placed in restraint and seclusion so they have a sense of how bad this is. No, we can't do that because union, of course, but what was the behind the union answer? People have trauma histories. How could you do that to people who have trauma histories? And I said, exactly. How could we be doing that to people who have trauma histories? Let's really think this through. To make a long story short, in Massachusetts, which loves paperwork, I don't know how you do in Montana here. You're more independence-oriented, more freedom-oriented. You have a lot of trees. That's true, actually. Tremendous access to natural resources. You know, now that you say it out loud, you should have a big reform problem than I have. But Massachusetts is bureaucratic, loves paperwork, loves it. On the back of every restraint form, you sign, the doctor signs, and then the individual who's restrained writes how they felt about it or what it was like for them. That's the 3rd page of the restraint form, okay? They write a personal thing. I hated this person. I can't believe this happened to me. They write something delusional. They don't refuse to do anything. Very few people say, thank you, this was helpful for helping me settle down. I'm not kidding. No, I actually looked for that. I'm not kidding. Because what we failed to do in our field was think about, okay, if people have a trauma history, we should know that. We should know all the things that soothe them and all the things that upset them. This is now we're into the individual aspects of our work. For one person, the mother calling will be soothing and loving and reassuring. For the next person, that will be triggering and upsetting. If, for instance, there's an abuse history, or they haven't had contact in 10 years, or there's some complicated element which is part of the human condition. But the clinicians weren't doing that. The child or the adult didn't do what they wanted to, so well, we're going to have to put you into restraints. What is restraint and seclusion fabulous at? It is fabulous at one thing. Stops behavior. Nothing stops behavior faster than putting a person in restraint and seclusion. It stops behavior. What doesn't it do? Everything else. It doesn't teach a person how to regulate themselves. It doesn't teach a person how to control themselves. It doesn't teach a person how to use words, how to differentiate the past from the present, all the things that get mucked up in trauma, which we're going to talk about some more. So anyway, so I go to these fancy Harvard places to do my training, right? Because I thought that would be like really smart of me. I thought that would be like I'd learn a lot there. So I go to America's most famous community mental health center. And here's what my restraint and seclusion training was. Ken, you're on call today, it's Tuesday. Here's a beeper. When it goes off, go evaluate the person in restraints and sign the form that they're okay. I said, let's just review. Now, again, I'm not the commissioner of mental health, I'm not triple boarded. I'm a kid. I don't know anything. So what I would do is I would go and I would interview the person, I'd try to be nice and respectful to them, and then I would sign the form. But I had this dim awareness, something's missing. I can't tell you what it is. The whole idea, of course, is what it is, but I didn't have any power and I wasn't in a position of authority and everybody else was just doing it. It kind of bugged me. I didn't really like that. I thought, we don't do anything about preventing that. upstreaming that, thinking about what triggers a person. How does a person get in somebody's face so that they're threatening to kill them? And people say to me, oh, Ken, you do a lot of work in restraint and seclusion. What do you do when the person has a chair and they're calling you a Nazi and they say they're going to kill you? And my answer is, well, then it's too late. That's the wrong question. It's all about figuring out why they pick up the chair, what triggers them, what upsets them. Anyway, then I go into child training because I like short people who don't know much, don't like their vegetables, and can't control their emotions. And I also think they're kind of cute, and also it's more family-oriented. And I'm a family-oriented systems person. So I do child training. So I go to this world-famous child state hospital, which has since been closed because of state budget cuts. I'm given the same beeper. Ken, when a child is in restraints, we want you to go, Wednesday's your day. All day Wednesday, when that beeper goes off, you go and you say hi to the child, you make sure they're breathing, and you sign the paper. And again, I had this dim awareness. Something's wrong with this. But again, I didn't have any authority or conceptual model, and this is important. I didn't have a cognitive schema. This is actually very important for trauma work. I didn't have a way of thinking about it, so I just participated in it. I didn't think I was doing evil. I really don't even now, but it was also unnecessary. So much unnecessary aggression and violence for people who largely had trauma histories. The thinking is about 80% of people have trauma histories who have serious psychiatric concerns. So it's not 100. But it's not 25%, it's a lot. And this is just if you ask people what was traumatic. For one person, it might be an abuse situation. For one person, they might have been raped when they were teenagers. For a different person, they might have been threatened when they were homeless. Someone threatened to kill them. And again, and if you ask people, it's interesting, humans are not that easy sometimes. There was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine. How many doctors felt shamed and humiliated during their medical school training? The answer was 90%. And I remember a man who just ripped me up, down, and center. He had a British accent. His name was Sully Epstein. And so, Duckworth, tell us about the thyroid. And I'd say, well, the thyroid is a gland here. It has, but Ducky Duckworth, he was very demeaning. This would be all in front of my peers now. Now, what's interesting about human beings is we remember our humiliations. Would you agree with that? There's something going on there in the brain. Now, I can't remember my second grade teacher's name, but I can remember the humiliation I felt when my father had a bipolar episode and basically was manic and came to get me at school. And I was so humiliated that someone would see that he was ill. Now, I love my father very much. This is the course of my life. Right? I've devoted my life to teaching and serving people because my father was such a fabulous guy. I lost him last summer. God rest his soul. And he had a terrible illness. And so this minor trauma, this would be an example of a small t trauma. Nobody was threatening to kill me, but he would periodically go from being a loving guy, fabulous father, always ready to go to the ball game. I mean, anytime he was free, you want to go to the ball game. So now what do I do with my kids? We go to the ball game. Like, it's a big source of happiness for me. But when he wasn't well, he was very ill. And he was quite manic and quite psychotic and at times very scary. And the police have come to my house and, kind of the whole NAMI shooting match. And so, well, that's, can be part of it. NAMI didn't exist then when I was a boy. It's interesting, NAMI didn't exist. This is 1977, 1978, 1976. A couple of moms get together in Madison, Wisconsin and say, are you kidding me? They're blaming me for my kid's schizophrenia? You're kidding me, right? Because we have 5 other kids that are fine. Are you kidding me? They're going to close Mendota State Hospital and they don't have any game plan for how to live in the community? You're kidding me, right? Just a couple of moms get together and that's how NAMI starts. But this is all before NAMI. It's all happening. My childhood is in the 60s and the 70s. It's all happening before then. So I do feel very blessed and I really thank God every day when I get to work for NAMI and be in this role. Because we are not alone in this line of work. So my small t trauma of the humiliation and the shame I felt about my dad being ill when he came to get me when I was in 2nd grade, and when he was sick in 5th grade, and 8th grade, 11th grade, the junior year at the University of Michigan, I remember these all quite vividly because I was afraid for him. I loved him. I was afraid for myself because I couldn't predict this. I had a general sense of unease about when it was coming again. Then there was a part of me which was completely cut off of it, and I was a good student trying to get a girl, playing basketball. Right? So part of it was completely unintegrated into my life, and part of it was so much the most important experience of my life, I wasn't naturally interested in science. This is true confession. I won the Social Studies Award at my high school. I didn't take any science. I went to the University of Michigan. I majored in political science and history. I took the absolute minimum number of science classes. The minimum. I went to the thing and I said, I want to be a doctor to help my father, but I'm really not that into science. It's a tremendous confession I'm making to you. I'm NAMI's medical director. I mean, my God, can you imagine? All I do is translate science now. Well, actually, we do a lot of policy, and we do a lot of advocacy. So that's actually social science. That's the stuff I was naturally interested in. So basically, so this very nice man, he was very gentle to me. We only spoke for half an hour. It's interesting how mentoring can happen in half an hour. And he said, if you're an excellent student, you can major in whatever you want. I wanted to kiss him, because I was interested in history and politics and how this world works, the social world works, sociology. So he said, take the minimum number of science classes, but make sure you get A's in all of them. Like, oh God, organic chemistry at the University of Michigan. So anyway, I did what any person would do is, I panicked, and then I got some resources, and then I figured out how to do that. That's my little journey. So I didn't, as a boy, if you said to me, what would you like to be? I would have said I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice or a history teacher. These were my passions. This is still what I read about when I'm not doing NAMI stuff. It's interesting. But I wanted to help my father so very badly, I decided to become a doctor. People ask me, how do you get somebody to take your medicines? I say, well, there's a great book, and I have references, and I have ideas. However, don't do it my way. My way costs $200,000 in 15 years, which is you go to medical school, then you go to Harvard, then you pick up the phone, you say, Dad, I love you, take your goddamn medicines. I'm a Harvard psychiatrist. That's a true story. That's a true story. Well, it is. It's a true story. That is that's ineffective. That's very time consuming. A lot of late nights. Really, I can't tell you how high a risk situation, all that medical training and all that stuff. And I was in the AIDS wards before they knew it was AIDS, and the workers wouldn't bring the food in, and we had to bring the food in. This is 1986, and nobody knew what it was, but we didn't think we could catch it. I mean, I went through all these adventures, to get into a field I had no natural interest in it. Well, it turned out being a psychiatrist is a great job for me, and I'm very, very grateful. But that's just one example of how a small T trauma can influence a person. It was the most salient experience of my childhood. It was by far the most powerful with the person I loved the most on planet Earth. It was a very powerful experience, wonderful guy, absolutely gem of a guy, and his funeral was absolutely beautiful. And what I can say is, those traumas that I felt led me to this whole path, which leads me to you. So I'm very grateful to be here. Let me tell you one other story about me so you can know a little bit about who is this guy who's talking about topics he's not an expert on. All right. So when I was 30, I got cancer. And this is another trauma, small T trauma, maybe a big T trauma. I don't know. It depends on, when you catch me. But basically, I'm 30 years old. I'm healthy. I'm married. I have no kids. And I find out that I have testicular cancer. And then it spread to another part of my body, and we do chemotherapy and big surgeries and remove all my lymph nodes and a year of pounding and lose my hair and the whole thing. Now, what's interesting about that is, of course, people treat cancer survivors like they're heroes, and people with mental illnesses like they're pariahs. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. We have a very big problem. We have a lot of work. That's why it's so great to see you all here for the breakfast burritos. So when I got cancer diagnosis, my cognitive world was shattered. I was healthy, I was a doctor, I was advancing in my little life to help my father and other people. I was married, I kind of had it all made, right? So I get cancer, and what's interesting about that is I'm just this post-traumatic response. I never developed PTSD, but in Boston, they have a lot of very small lanes that go this way. You're familiar, ever driven in Boston? Yeah, some people have PTSD simply from driving in Boston. No, I'm not kidding. Because, accidents, scary things, a very unsettling place. So anyway, one of the roads that I drove to from my home to the Massachusetts Mental Health Center, the place where they gave me the beeper and said, Kenneth, the guy's in restraints, please sign the paper. The world's famous place where they taught nothing about trauma, prevention, de-escalation, all those crucial things. I couldn't drive in the left lane because I became so terrified that someone would cross the midline. I was absolutely, it was amazing to me. And in fact, it got to the point where I couldn't drive on that road. I had to take all the side roads, 10 minutes extra every day. Now, it's a small confession, but basically I was so hyper-aroused. And my cognitive schema, the world is a safe place, I'm okay, had been shattered by one day being told this information, having no hair, having lost, 30 or 40 lymph nodes, and having one testicle, side effects from the medicines, problems, like a lot of problems. I'm a kid, and my body has basically been devastated by this. And I got over it. Interestingly, I got over it. Time heals most wounds is my corollary to the expression time heals all wounds. Time heals many wounds. So I had some small t trauma, maybe big T, and some small t as an adult, maybe big T, but I never developed post-traumatic stress disorder. But I did do a lot of therapy talking about all these things. And so I wasn't overwhelmed in the same way that some persons might be. I think because of luck, biology, strengths, I only had 2 T traumas. You often see people have more than one trauma. So they're young and they're beaten or they're abused by a babysitter. They're an adult, they get into an abusive relationship. Then something else happens to them. These traumas kind of accumulate. Then they go into the service to find structure. They're sent to Iraq. A lot of people come back from Iraq very traumatized and with head injuries. The head injuries are the big, great problem the VA is trying to deal with right now. There is no easy game plan. So that's a little bit about me and about how our field has started to figure out that you have to have trauma-informed care. You need to know what a person's trauma is so that you can help prevent their being triggered. Example, sexual abuse survivor, man says, let's make love. That's a trigger for many people who've been sexually abused. You have to know that so you can separate past from present. You have to figure out, is this person abusive in the present or does this person love me? People with PTSD have difficulty sorting past from present. So I'm going to do a little, we're going to do a little, I don't know, improv theater. I made this up on the plane yesterday. Go with me. Gary, I want you to come up to the front, and I need about 6 or 7 other volunteers. We're going to be doing the brain in different functions of the brain. Gary has a brain on his shirt, which I just want to share with you. So we're going to be having people represent 3 parts of the human brain. Kind of the reptile brain, which is the lowest brain, right? So this is the part of your brain that does breathing, eating, temperature regulation. That's what reptiles do. They don't think. They don't have deep emotional connections, do they? Not as far as I know. Then we're going to have some people be the middle part of the brain. That's where all the emotional information is stored. That's where love, intimacy. Dogs have that part of the brain. When I was in Nami, Vermont, there was a little sign I was driving. I just gave a speech there last week. It's no coincidence that man's best friend cannot talk. Isn't that funny? I love that. That was just a sign at a restaurant. It had nothing to do with the Nami thing. I was just driving by it. It's no coincidence that man's best friend cannot talk. So basically the mammalian brain, the middle part of the brain, has like a limbic emotional sense. Like people love their animals love them back, right? There's something there. It's not a verbal context. I'm not sure they have a spiritual life. I'm not sure they can plan or abstract too much, but they have some learning capacity. They can figure out when the food comes, right? They can figure out that they have to poop outside, not inside, right? They can learn some very basic things. So they have a tiny little frontal lobe, tiny, 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 tiny. And of course, Homo sapiens, we have this whole frontal cortex thing, which enables us to plan, worry, obsess, develop a spiritual life, conceptualize a future, reflect on what happened to us. Gee, that breakfast burrito was unsettling, but it's probably not about me. It's probably more about the breakfast burrito. So you can use a cognitive schema, right? I feel queasy after having Gary's free breakfast burrito, but it's not about me. Now the dog might say, right, I feel horrible, period. The human would be able to say, I don't think it's really about me. I don't think I'm really ill. That was just a little unsettling what I ate. So I need a few more volunteers if you'll go with me, because I want to try to demonstrate something. Come on up. If you're willing to volunteer, please come up. Thank you. It's so nice. I've made this talk up. So we're going to try something. You're my, guinea pig audience. Or it's a horse audience or moose audience? Some animal. You want to be the puppy. Okay. All right, Gary, because you've been pushing breakfast burritos, your job, I need a few more people actually. Please, come on, yeah, just help me out here. It's kind of improv theater meets a psychiatrist who doesn't know, isn't an expert on PTSD in Montana. That's kind of what we're doing here. All right. Oh, great, thank you. All females, look at that, except for the man that I demanded come up to the stage. Huh? Come on. Nami mommies? I think so, okay. All right, so let's go over. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do my best to work with you and see if I can demonstrate what happens to people in post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? So you guys are gonna be the reptile functions. Gary, your job is gonna be to say, I have breakfast burritos for everyone. Okay, you don't have to say it over and over. I'm going to tell you when to say it. Cindy, my name's Ken. It's nice to meet you. You're going to perform this basic reptile function of breathing. So I want you to just breathe deep in and out. This is good for everyone. But Cindy's actually going to do it in our demonstration of the brain. Thank you. Okay, so Cindy and Gary are the reptile brain. And that's not an insult on them. They're demonstrating this. They're just as smart as everyone else. And what's your name? Neela? Sheila, good morning. Sheila, and your name is? Laura. You're hugging people because basically you represent that part of the brain that is affectionate and emotional and limbic. All right? Now, what's your name? Brooke. Now I have a job for you, and I don't know, do you feel comfortable with the job? You're going to be the body and the brain's smoke alarm. Okay? And what you have to do is say, everything is scary now, or something terrible is happening. You're the most important person in post-traumatic stress disorder. You are the star of PTSD. And unfortunately, Brooke, I can't give you like a holistic role or anything, because the part of the brain that says something horrible is happening actually controls these guys and controls these guys. And this is very important for PTSD. So you're a one-note Charlie, and it's not the nicest note. Something horrible is happening to me. Emergency, emergency. It's any variation on that, Brooke, okay? Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Great. What's your name?
Louise.
Louise, great. So what are some big picture brain functions that our frontal lobe does? Math, okay, calculations and thinking. You're going to be calculations and thinking. You're going to be thinking, how do I, conceptualize a way to make sense of this? All right, is there a math problem I could apply to this trauma that has happened to me? Okay? And what you learn is that Brooke's going to shut you down. That's what we're going to do. Hi, what's your name? Hi, Lillian. What's another frontal function that your frontal brain can do that dogs can't do? Consciousness. So tell me more. What's right and wrong? So kind of a moral sense, a sense of control. That maybe if these guys just want to hug everybody, right? Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe I should put the brakes on that because I actually don't know that person. Well, but there's an inhibitory thing. And when you drink 3 beers or 4 beers, this conscience or moral function sometimes fades to the back. Right? And people say things they might not otherwise say. So, Lillian, you represent the inhibitory function of the frontal lobe. To say, no, I don't think so, not just now. Okay, not just now. Hi. Hi. What's your name? Stephanie. Give me another frontal lobe function for Stephanie to perform. So we have thinking and reason, math, computation. We have the inhibitory function. What's another thing we do in the frontal lobe? Organizing, planning. What's going to happen next? What should I do next? How many of you have like planners, Blackberries, right? Stephanie, date books, planners, organizers, but also conceptualizing your future. That's important, because to have, a future orientation, you have to conceptualize your future. Unfortunately, Stephanie, what happens to children when they're traumatized, if you actually look at the Chowchilla bus trauma, do any of you know of this? I'll tell you a horrible story. Some very bad people hijacked an entire school bus of children at different ages and basically took the bus into a ravine and buried it. Don't get me started, for a couple of days. None of the children were killed, and the people were prosecuted. And a psychologist was waiting for just such a catastrophe so she could follow the children and understand different developmental ages of how trauma impacts people. So Lenore Terr, who wrote the book Too Scared to Cry, flew basically to California interviewed all these kids, and she found the biggest thing that they found was Stephanie's function had died in the kids. That they didn't have PTSD symptoms per se. What they had was they didn't have a sense of a future. They didn't imagine themselves going to college or getting married. Their life had become foreshortened. So for some reasons, for kids who had been traumatized, Stephanie's very important function had been removed from them. Okay, hi. Hi, Marsha, I'm Ken.
And be nice. They need to be nice.
They need to be nice. What's another function that we do in the frontal lobes?
Worry.
Worry, beautiful. That's perfect. All right, so I've never done this before, but you guys are so fun in Montana. I thought I would try it. So I want you to all do your function, brain function, right now. This is you at normal experience. And so if you're a planner, say, what am I doing next Tuesday? If you're a worrier, say, oh my God, could you believe it?
Oh my God, what's going to happen?
No, you have to breathe deep. You're a Zen master. You're just breathing. Things are horrible. Things are horrible. Okay, so let's stop. That's beautiful. You guys are great. Let's give them a big hand. See? All right, so beautiful. So this is you at your normal state. You have all these capacities within you. The reptile functions keep you alive. Breakfast, burrito, and breathing. Right? The mammalian brain is emotional storage. It's not only hugs, it's also fear, anxiety, terror. I mean, I started the job really great, but it's all the feeling emotions. Hugging is good, though. Hugging is good. Brooke, you have the most important job in the trauma story because you're the harbinger of danger. And that changes every dynamic, okay? So, let's try one more time in the resting state.
Resting?
Yeah, in the ordinary state. This is one person's brain, the whole team of you. Okay, go ahead, do your thing. God, this is fun. Should we just stop the rest of the talk now? I think maybe we could. Okay. All right, beautiful. So you guys are fabulous. I couldn't believe when I was on the plane this was going to be this fun. I was getting all nervous about it. I was starting to worry, frontal lobe function. I was starting to say, oh God, something terrible is going to happen. I was getting into a little of that, and then I thought, oh, what the heck? They know I'm not an expert on this, so I'm just going to go with this. Now, give me a trauma that happens to people from the audience. Something bad that's happened to someone that you know. Does not have to be you. Does not have to be a personal thing. Yes?
Sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse. Okay. So let's put some context onto that. Sexual abuse. How old's the person? How old is this person?
2.
5. Okay. We're going to go with a 5-year-old child. Let's talk a little bit about a 5-year-old kid. Now, this is one thing I do know something about because I'm a child psychiatrist. What are they into? What is their world like?
Sex. No, it's about, right now it's about kindergarten.
5 years old.
It's in
Kindergarten. Yeah, when you want to do the ages of a child, a person who's 12, right, is in 6th grade because they start at 6. So just add 6. Usually if they're held back or they start late, it could be 5 or 7. But basically a 5-year-old is just starting kindergarten. 1st grade is 6. What kind of things are you into in a kindergarten? Play. And you feel a lot of emotion. It's almost like there's no capacity for inhibition. Remind me who was inhibition. Who was inhibition who would say, you know, I'm not sure I should do that? Yes. You fade back. You're going to go back just a little bit because we're 5 now. We don't really have that capacity. So when we're excited, we're excited. When we're down, we're crying, we're pounding. Kids are their emotion in a way. So I want the 2 of you to step forward. The hugging and fear duo. The limbic emotional. Come forward, both of you. So you're more important for a 5-year-old per square inch than an adult. This is some of the best stuff going for adults, but you can't always access it. And you, the inhibitory person, you faded to back. You're in there, but it's way back. The only thing you can really inhibit is not running into traffic. Really? Really? And basically staying away from strangers, because that's something your mother has taught you. These are 2 things you inhibit, right? That's about all a 5-year-old can really do. All right, so now this poor person is sexually abused. So now, let's just talk about the brain functions that change. When that trauma is happening, okay, you guys raise your hand and come forward more. You raise your hand. You become the most prominent story. What are the emotions you're feeling?
I'm going to hide under that chair.
I'm going to hide under that chair because I want to cut off from this experience. I want to not be here. Go ahead. Die. I wish I was dead. Another one. Terrified. Terrified. Can't move. Paralyzed with fear. Confused, overwhelmed. Now, that's because when you guys come forward, the processing part of the brain actually doesn't work very well. That's the problem with trauma. When something terrible is happening to a person, they're not thinking, what am I going to do next week? How do I plan for this? How do I integrate this into my other experiences? What was your job, Louise?
ABCs and 1, 2, 3s.
ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's just not going to be that important in that moment. So what happens, you guys still have to do your job, because otherwise we're dead. Burrito, breathe. Burrito, breathe. Yeah, they stay, but what's interesting about them is they send a shock wave to a whole audience. I want you all to do the wave for me like we're at Fenway Park for me. Would you start on the side? Would you do this for me? Just humor me. Humor me. The whole thing, that's it. All right, now come back. Now do it fast. Do it fast this way. Now do it fast back. Now do it faster, faster. Your body's becoming very overwhelmed with feeling and sensation. You actually can no longer organize what you're doing. Your body is overwhelmed. So your body is now overwhelmed by the trauma. So your body's sending messages back to the feeling states, which are what?
I want to pretend now.
What?
I want to pretend.
Pretend, yes. Pretend everything's okay. Cut myself off. Yes, a hand?
You either want to feel invisible or you start taking it out on yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. So we're going to talk about what happens, like what are the outproducts of that later. But basically, but yes, you are absolutely right. We're going to get into the kind of the response to it in a bit. What else is your body telling you? Run, freeze, fight. But a 5-year-old isn't going to fight. They're being sexually abused by an adult. It's not going to happen. Is a 5-year-old going to run? Maybe, but probably not. A 5-year-old's probably going to freeze. Fight, flight, freeze. Your body is sending the message. Your blood pressure's up, your heart rate's up. You've injected chemicals into your body so that if you're bitten by an animal, your blood will clot faster. Your body's in a full panic response, not from sexual abuse, but probably from being chased by mastodons or being killed by someone or threatened. So your body has a whole physiologic explosion. But it doesn't come in very handy at this time. Yes? The confusion of pleasure. That's another piece to the puzzle. If you've talked to people who have sexual abuse, some people report that some of it feels good and that compounds their experience because these are pleasure centers in the human body. Right? So then they feel guilty later in their frontal lobes. Yes?
That's what I was saying. You need to add in the, well, is this someone they know? Is there grooming involved? Is there,
Yes.
Is there that whole trust issue?
So the whole thing with sexual abuse is the closer the person is to your life, the deeper a violation, a betrayal, and a confounding factor it is. So let's say it's a family member as opposed to a total stranger. Total stranger, the whole thing still happens, but if it's somebody who's closer to you in your family, then your cognitive function, which has been completely overwhelmed. So now what you have is you might have a 5-year-old who can't remember anything of this. Memory, planning, integration, all these are functions that's more or less the frontal lobe. Huh? You guys are supposed to store it. You store this experience, and it's still in your body, and it's still in your emotional self. Oh, what service in Montana. Come on. Come on. So it's still in your body. That wave you did, right, that's a body memory that you're going to have later. There'll be an experience or something. People who have post-traumatic stress disorder don't often have symptoms. They don't often have memories as much as they have symptoms. Basically, this gets stored as undigested raw movies. Okay? Undigested. It would be digested by these frontal lobes. And by the way, I failed you. When this was supposed to happen,
I was supposed to be saying, oh, it's horrible.
now you do it. You do it.
Horrible, I'm gonna die.
Excellent. Now you're 37 years old. Now you're 37 years old, and you're in a relationship, you know, with a person who's complicated, but loves you. Okay? Now, the person says, let's make love, or something like that. What do you say?
I'm confused. I don't.
So the past is now the present. This is a real thing. The smoke detector has been activated in a very fundamental way as a youth, right? You should scoot forward. Because if you've had a trauma, please, thank you. If you've had a trauma, the smoke detector is going to now have false alarms.
Very false. I don't know what's happening. What's going on?
But the person may not be an abuser. The person may be just a person who's a little complicated, or inartful, or inarticulate, or difficult, or a substance abuser, but not a bad guy. But your experience of this, which is deeply embedded in your middle brain, right? Where you store your emotions, your feelings, your experiences, these are the guys that are now active. These are the guys that are now active. So you can get triggered with fear, anxiety, terror, and this piece, the smoke detector, is now going to be raising alarms, true and false, more throughout your life. Okay? Now what happens to all these guys? Well, they missed the first part because they basically weren't able to say, okay, child sexual abuse is a profound and difficult trauma. It happens in some percentage of people, more than most people can recognize because it's such a shameful thing. Unfortunately, I'm in that group of people who's had this experience. I wonder if I'm going to be experiencing a little numbing, a little hyperreactivity, a little being cut off from myself later on in life, and I wonder if I'm going to startle quickly when people say boo. Right? They're not going to say that because they're 5 years old. And in addition to that, all their beautiful computation, planning, inhibitory function is in the back because when your middle brain is activated, the front brain shuts down. You keep breathing. You gotta keep breathing. So the brain figured out basically when we're overwhelmed on this sense, we activate the body and we keep the breathing and the burritos coming. What we cannot do, basically, and this is just the circuitry of the brain, what we cannot do is process and put this into experience. Let's take a different experience, less traumatic as an adult. Give me an example. All right, everybody gotta go back to your regular places. Give me a less traumatic thing, but which is unsettling.
Car accident.
Car accident, perfect. All right, car accident. It's not a bad one. It's not a bad one, but you know, your car's totaled and it's gonna wreck your day.
It was snowing. There was ice. You spit out.
Perfect. And you slugged into a tree and went pow. Okay? Because it has to be a trauma. It can't, you know, this isn't a nice story. This is it's traumatic.
Car's wrecked.
Car's wrecked, but you're okay. You're okay, all right? And your insurance rate's gonna go through the roof. Okay. All right, Brooke, so you come up. Brooke is again the most important person in the entire drama because you are now terrified. You've lost control of your vehicle. You know from your cognitive planning, you guys come up real quick and say...
I'm gonna die.
Exactly.
I can't afford this.
Exactly. What are you gonna say?
How am I gonna pay for my car?
You're inhibiting things. You're back again. You have to miss this.
How am I gonna get everything taken care of?
Right, exactly. I'm screwed. I can't get to work. Oh my God, I'm going to miss my appointment. And what's your?
I don't know if I can do it without my car. I don't know how I can work.
Exactly. And while all that's happening, but you guys aren't like huge in this drama, you guys, the terror people, come way up and send a message to our friends, Burrito Man and Breather. And you guys do the wave again for me. Whole thing. Your body is getting chemicals injected into it so you can run faster, right? Heart beats faster. You have chemicals injected into your body so that if you are cut, that's beautiful. Not bad, really. Not bad. If I hit the lotto, I'll take you all to Fenway Park, okay? All right, so we got this car accident. Tell me a little bit what happens the next day. What happens the next day? Frontal lobes, how are you engaging? Tell me what you say. Come on back up, because you can inhibit things now. It's the next day.
I'm really worried about driving.
I'm worried a little bit about driving. It's a little scary.
Whose car am I gonna drive today?
How the heck am I gonna get to work?
I gotta call the insurance company and ask them how much money it's gonna cost me and where's my rent-a-car and...
And Louise, maybe you're angry at yourself, but you're gonna inhibit raging at yourself because you know that's not really appropriate, because anybody can skid out on a snowy road, right? So you're telling these guys, please don't scream at me, right? It was just an accident, okay?
And anger only lasts 90 seconds.
Now, but the next day, when you get on the road again, who are the most active people? It's the dynamic duo and Brooke, right? And now Brooke sees a snowy road. What do you say?
I'm a little panicky, but it's kind of scary.
It's kind of scary. Brooke has no modulating capacity. All she is your smoke detector. She's your amygdala. It's a little walnut-sized thing in the middle of your brain. It is your alarm system, and it has enabled us to survive mastodons and all sorts of trouble. I mean, it's a brilliant scheme for avoiding physical danger. It's brilliant. What it doesn't allow you to do is process things cognitively and use that beautiful brain so easily. So now, because it's an auto accident, tell me the kind of things you tell yourself, the cognitive people.
I would say that you just got to take it slow.
Just take it slow.
Yesterday.
Remember what you did, learn from your experience. Plan for the future. Beautiful. Make sure you slow down. You just got to go easy on that, right? What?
Thank God you're alive.
Thank God I'm alive, right? That's what the smoke detector says. That's the other thing you're allowed to say.
Oh, thank God I'm alive.
Thank God I'm alive. Don't ever do that again,
Don't ever do that.
okay? That's basically all you are is, Brooke, you're this massively self-protective feature of human beings, which keeps us around. Now, you guys are still in the foreground, but because you guys are able to settle them down, you come back here. You come back, because it wasn't that terrible a memory. It wasn't that overwhelming a memory. And how do you reassure your emotional self? Say some things you'd say.
I'm okay.
No, you can't say it, Brooke. Brooke, all you say is, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Don't ever do that again. We nearly lost our life. You're the smoke detector, Brooke. That's all you can say. What do you guys say? Because now this is your frontal lobe talking to your emotional self.
Okay, I can afford this, the insurance.
I can handle this. We can do that. That's why they have insurance. Give me another one.
The money's okay.
I got my whole life ahead of me, right? Nothing hurt. I didn't break anything. I didn't hurt anyone else. Boy, I feel really good. You guys need to relax. It's going to be okay. We're not going to die, right? We're going to settle down. Now, 6 months later, a truck cuts you off, right? Well, let's just do this. A truck cuts you off. Now, who's going to be in the forefront again? The big three. The big three. Come on, it's all about them. And then, whether you do or do not avoid the truck, do or not get into an accident, your body, I'm not going to make you do the wave this time. Exactly, here we go again, exactly. So basically then, you're going to be re-traumatized in that area. And so driving will become more scary for you. And why you need cognitive behavior therapy to help with your anxiety, come on up front. We're bringing you up front, we're enrolling you. Cognitive behavior therapy strategies where you change your thinking to improve how you're feeling. So basically, instead of saying, what's a very negative thing you could say after the truck cut you off?
Thank God I'm alive.
Negative?
Yeah, negative thing. You're not allowed to say anything except we're gonna die. What? U-S-O-B. You bad. You bad. All right, that's very protective. It doesn't involve any of you guys, right? It's very protective. It's not bad. What's another thing you could say?
You say that you're an idiot, you don't know how to drive.
I am an idiot. I am a loser. I'm a terrible driver. I'm gonna die on the roads of Montana. I better move to Boston where they have the tea. Right? No, but this is what the frontal lobe would say. What are a couple of... What?
Can I say it about the truck driver?
Of course you can.
But you're saying that's what I do, is I say,
Oh, it depends. This is the range of choices you have. He's bad. I'm bad. Roads are bad. Right? And the role of the clinician and of the family members to say, you're not bad, driving is scary. Disidentify with your symptoms. But if you have a big trauma history, you may identify with the symptoms very strongly. Because it's very, like for me, this little thing with my father was the most salient experience of my life. So I identify with it, right? So if you've been traumatized, it might become the most important part of your self-concept. So let's say you've been, now we're back to the 5-year-old, you've been abused. What kind of things might you think about yourself? This is frontal lobes. What are you thinking about yourself? Remember, you don't have good memories for this. You have body memories. It's all in the audience. You don't really have a good handle on it. You don't have a conceptual framework. It's the way. So what kind of things, might you say to yourself?
You would think that you're disgusting and nobody would ever love you.
I'm disgusting. Nobody will want my body because it's been violated. That's a perfect example. What's another one? I'm really uncomfortable here. I wish I wasn't here. I wish I could check out of my body. These are very, very good examples. So basically, you have I think, what is a very good model. This is now, I think, the state-of-the-art model of how the brain and the body work together in trauma. There's some ideas for how to work with trauma, but nobody's really figured it all out. Let me give you some examples of things people try. One is group therapy. What do you think group therapy does? I'm not alone. That's a cognitive strategy which basically says this is not because I am bad. This is because I'm part of a group of people who are in this club. Yes?
Well, it also seems part of the limbic system as well.
And part of the limbic system, it's okay to feel a lot about this because it's a safe place to feel a lot.
It's belonging.
It's belonging. And you may feel isolated if you've been abused. You may, go for a belonging sense. So that's what group therapy has some advantages for. The interesting thing is it a good idea for people to just remember more things? Well, maybe not if they don't have more strategies developed for how to cope with it, because as the three of you get more pronounced, right, and you guys go in the background, that can be overwhelming to a person. This is flashbacks, undigested movies, being cut off, because it's so overwhelming, you guys just completely check out. You're completely gone. You're not even in this room. You're not even present. And so this is what people will say, I feel cut off from my body. I feel cut off from my experience. Another strategy people use for PTSD are medications. Now, what are medications trying to do?
Suppress the symptoms.
They're trying to take the edge off of symptoms. Do they cure PTSD? Definitely not. Absolutely not. But they might take the edge off of this, and basically they might try to restore some balance. So they might inch you back a little bit, and theoretically they inch you forward. They don't bring you all the way forward, they inch you forward. So basically then the question is, with the medications, can you now use psychotherapy, support, group work, and what about all you guys in the audience? Body work. A real growth stock in my line of work for the people that are ahead of the game, not the people who are behind the game, is body work. So this is everything from yoga, meditation, because remember, all this stuff happened to your body when you were doing the wave. And because you can't remember all of it, because you were trying to get through it, your body's going to store it. Body stores. Body keeps a score in this stuff. And I think that's really true. And my field has not been well integrated between body and mind. So that's another example of an area. Yoga reduces people's heart rate variation. What's interesting about that, basically, is people who are traumatized, their heart rate is high, but it's similar. And what you want is you want to get people to basically have more of a range. If you do yoga with people, there have been some studies to show that that's helpful in developing more of a normal response. The heart can go up and the heart can go down in a more normal manner. It's not just fixed at a very stressed area. EMDR, have you heard of that?
Yes.
All right, so EMDR is eye movement deprogramming. Nah, let's ignore them. I'm in Montana, basically. Yeah, it's kind of a... It has its own je ne sais quoi. EMDR, there's a woman who was very troubled about something, who was a psychologist named Francine Shapiro. She was taking a walk, and she was looking back and forth between trees, just taken in a beautiful place like this. And she noticed, I'm soothing myself. This is helping me. I'm soothing myself. So then she did a whole series of studies, which have now gone from, are you kidding me, to controversial, to, hey, maybe this just might work. That's where we're at. We were at, are you kidding me, 10 years ago. I really doubt it, lady, 8 years ago. Now, hey, this is interesting. This might just work. So basically, EMDR is a series of strategies involving the therapist moving their hand, a blinking light back and forth. The idea basically is it's stimulating some aspect of the feelings and bringing the cognition into play. It's an effort to basically talk about the trauma, but not on a couch in analysis for a decade, just talking. It's trying to get at some of the feeling states and then trying to employ cognitive strategies at the same time. It's very interesting. I'm not trained in EMDR, but I know a lot of people who've been helped by it. It's interesting. Are any of you EMDR people here in Montana? There's a few. What's been your experience?
Being trained or have had it?
Either one. What's been your experience?
Absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely phenomenal.
I get astonished when I'm doing it with a client.
Uh-huh. You what?
I'm astonished sometimes at
You're astonished at how good it works.
There are 144 of us in the last count.
Wow. So you've helped a lot of people. Anybody else have experience with this? Yes, you want to talk about it real quick?
It was a fantastic.
A fantastic experience. Now, what's interesting about this is one of the principles of medicine is first do no harm. I haven't really heard people complaining that it harms them. I'm just telling you, that's very important in my line of work. No, I'm telling you. Medications can cause side effects? Yes. EMDR, eye movement, deprogramming, and reprocessing. Is that the right acronym? Desensitization. No! Right. So basically, Francine Shapiro invented this in California. It's basically a person. Do you want to describe it because you do it? It's basically, I'll do it because I have a microphone, but you might do it better.
Well, she said that she wished she'd named it differently because you can do it with headphones. It's alternating stimuli, whether it's tapping on the knee or whether it's tones in alternating ears. Or
And isn't the thinking that that's engaging sensory experiences in your body, and basically you're recruiting cognitive functioning while you're experiencing things?
Yeah.
Kinda?
You know, there are more theories than
Yeah.
real conclusions about why it works.
Right, we don't know why it works.
A lot of controlled studies have been done.
So, you know, this is just an interesting area. Yes?
One of the best things about that is that you can actually begin your thinking process with it, but it doesn't have as much emotional impact. So if you're revisiting the trauma,
You're not overwhelmed.
not overwhelmed with it, and it's kind of like
So the big-
watching yourself on television.
That's what people report. So you're kind of tapping into a part of yourself where you're recruiting your cognitive capacity, but the big three aren't running it.
Right.
That's what some people report. Right? Because once the big three get involved, they tend to shut down the frontal lobe. So yoga, meditation, group work, ordinary psychotherapy can be useful for a person who has cognitive capacity and wants to put some of it into perspective. But because we're not good at integrating mind and body, that isn't going to help with the body memories, the somatosensory stuff, pain syndromes, all that stuff that comes with the trauma history. That isn't going to address that. So it's not as holistic as you might like, but some people are helped by it. Some people with PTSD are really quite symptomatic over time. Yes? Brooke, I'm sorry.
I go to a cognitive behavioral.
Yes.
And she has really helped me a lot. It totally changed almost.
And Brooke said basically, I don't know if you could hear that CBT has made a huge difference for Brooke. And do you want to describe that real quick?
I go to a cognitive behavioral therapist here in Missoula, and as far as I know, she's the only one that's actually licensed in the state to do that. And you guys can answer me if you know differently. But it changes the way you think to change the way you feel. And it really works well for me. I used to be in the hospital like every month or every 2 months, and I haven't been in the hospital now for like, gosh, I don't know how many years, like 5 years.
Thank you. Another comment. Yes.
Well, I work in art, and I've noticed that now they're starting to recognize that color, people working with art, and getting the color to, it does no harm. It changes patterns.
This is the role of art therapy?
I work in art, and I guess it's right there.
So I have found art to be a very interesting thing. Now, Carl Jung was very big on art. People go to therapy with a Jungian person, they draw, they paint. And the inner expression is placed outward. And the idea with that is you're not in yourself, now you're slightly apart from yourself. Similar to what you described with EMDR. It's not you being overwhelmed, it's slightly displaced. And once it's a little out of us and it's not a threat and Brooke's not yelling, right? Then you can work with it more. I mean, the idea is to recruit those beautiful frontal lobes to help with the most important thing, which is self-protection, while maintaining your emotions. And the whole idea is to integrate these things, and you got to keep breathing and eating, right? And then you got to figure out how to get your body to become less hyper-aroused and less cut off. And this is kind of the challenge for people with PTSD. This virtual Iraq thing is a very interesting thing the Army's big on. It's not clear what the science is, but basically they're having guys watch movies of things in Iraq similar to what they experienced, and they're stopping the tape, having groups talk about it, and they're trying to recruit their cognitive thinking about it. This is not your fault. You went to serve our country. You were placed in a very scary situation. None of this is your fault. And they're trying to basically get them to remember the things that were cut off from the undigested movies, which become flashbacks, and recruit the frontal lobes into putting this into perspective. Gee, all soldiers have felt this from the time of the ancient Greek writers. If you read Homer, the guy won the MacArthur Genius Grant. He basically teaches the Odyssey and the Peloponnesian Wars to soldiers from Iraq, because these experiences of I can't believe I participated in this, I'm overwhelmed by what I saw, I'm traumatized by what I did, I was terrified so often, intermixed with hours and weeks of boredom. I mean, this is the same thing that Homer's describing in these things. And basically he's saying to the vets, and he won this MacArthur Genius Grant, it's not about you. It's about the journey of being a soldier. That these are almost, over eons of time. This is not about you being too vulnerable in Iraq. War has been very damaging to people's psyches for eons, and you have to figure a way to get around that. And you should be celebrated as a hero, which of course is why Vietnam was such a catastrophe for people's psychological health. People came back from Vietnam and were spit on and told they were baby killers and other horrible things. So then they had been traumatized and then devalued. Is anybody here a Vietnam vet? Is that more or less? Yes. Yes. Horrible. Absolutely all the wrong things. So basically, in addition to this very powerful set of emotional experiences, right, you have to all move up now. All, the cognitive message to you are all negative. So now say something bad to yourself. This is in 1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly. So basically, it's anti-CBT to be devalued after serving your country and then being traumatized. It's anti-CBT. It's reverse CBT. It's so awful that people were treated like that. And I think, it's all the worst of kind of how messages are reinforcing. So, it's the opposite of what you want. And regardless of your feelings about the war, the individuals have been traumatized, and they should be celebrated, for their service. I mean, it's very interesting. That's an important point. Yes?
What does CBT stand for?
Cognitive Behavior Therapy. So basically, this is used in the Big Four to help inform the Big Three. Basically, that's what it is. The Big Four is informing the Big Three. I think that's actually, I just made this up, but I think it kind of makes some sense to me. Does it make sense to you? Does it kind of work, kind of? I don't know. All right, so before we stop, with this improv Montana theater, I want you guys all to do your thing one more time and then a big round of applause. Go ahead, do your thing. Woohoo! All right, come on. Thank you. That was unexpectedly fabulous. Thank you, Brooke. That was just brilliant, really. I mean, you guys were fabulous at that. So, Gary, next time I'll give you a more prominent starring role. So too you, Lillian. But unless we're breathing and eating, it can't happen. But you are the message, basically, to the body part of it. So the stuff's all in the audience, too. Yes?
Are you new to Montana?
I'm from Boston. I'm new to Montana as of 2 o'clock in the morning. But I love Montana. I love Montana. What's not to love? Come on. When I was in medical school, I cut out and we drove all across America to go to Glacier National Park. I mean, come on, you can't beat it. Name a cooler place? I can't really think of one. So, and then when I was out of medical school, I went with some buddies. And where did I go? Going to the Sun Road, Glacier National Park. I mean, come on. So there's something very special about it. Yes, sir.
I wanted to know, given that some traumas are very early.
Yes.
This happens, what we were just talking
Yes.
about. Can you come back to being normal or like a pre-trauma?
Well, you're asking the great question of like, what's resilience? How do people overcome it? The way I think about it is, your body did what it needed to do to survive, and that was amazing and awesome. However, now it has side effects, and you have to figure a way to overcome that. So your body shot itself through it with adrenaline. You raised your heart rate up to 220. This is moms who can pick up a car to save their child. You've heard that story, right? That's all the body response for what we just did, right? Car accident, they're overwhelmed, their body becomes stronger. That's a very interesting question. People with trauma do heal. People do heal. What's interesting is, I'm not sure there's a best practice for it. For one person, it's yoga and psychotherapy. For another person, it's EMDR and a group. For another person, medications really does take the edge off the flashbacks. It's a very individual business. One thing I'll say about mental health is there's really not too many things that are one size fits all. And I think with trauma, that's a good example. Now, some people have probably been helped with their trauma by psychoanalysis, but the typical thinking is that psychoanalysis tends to activate the big three and try to put the cognitive framework into it, but because you're going so often, it's kind of re-traumatizing. I'll just say, that's the classical thinking. I'm not saying there's probably one person in this room who grew up on the East Coast, went to psychoanalysis, and was helped with their trauma. And so I'm not against that. I'm not against it. I'm just saying, like, if you look at the hierarchy of strategies, what that strategy seems to do is activate more and more memories, but it doesn't seem necessarily to give the person the time or the framework, because it's so stimulating to be talking about it 4 or 5 times a week. Whereas EMDR is a smaller dose, right, with more time to reorganize and build on your strengths. So when you do EMDR with someone, sir, how often do you do it?
Weekly, perhaps.
Once a week. So you have the whole rest of the week to be a mom, to be a worker, right, to process it, think about it. Wow, what was that? To talk about with a few people you feel safe with. Holy cow, I remembered something. That does happen in EMDR. People remember things they didn't remember before. You've seen that, right? In the back?
Yeah,
yes.
It's important. EMDR is not a therapy, it's a technique.
It's a technique.
You use it as
right.
in the process.
So to use a baseball metaphor, it's a certain intervention for a certain kind of thing. So, in a baseball lingo, be bringing on a left-handed strikeout pitcher to get one guy or 2 guys. It might not be the whole game for you, but it's a technique to do one very important thing in the service of your larger mission. Yes?
I find that journaling helps tremendously.
What does journaling? Oh, that's a great thing. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, when you give a talk for the first time, you do blow it sometimes. Thank you for that. People report journaling is helpful, and also a more detailed kind of journaling is something I have seen but have not used, so I'm just going to tell you about it. The idea is to figure out separating past from present. So I was really upset today. What was the probable cause? I was triggered by the truck cutting me off. Is this in the past or is this in the present? That's probably a past thing. I don't really have to deal with that actively now. So the idea is actively trying to figure out, whether it's the big three or your cognition, past or present. And how has journaling helped you, may I ask?
It helps me. I can go back to a time and see where it had helped me back in the past.
So you're basically able to do this kind of differentiation of present and past and putting them into perspective.
Yes.
It's a crucial thing because some people report that if you're traumatized early, you have difficulty differentiating past from present. Because these memories have no time or perspective. Do you see that? Right? All the functions, planning, inhibiting, calculating, worrying, they have nothing, they're time sensitive. Future, past. This is just raw emotion in the middle part of your brain. Yes, Brooke.
Do you think biofeedback and relaxation exercises?
Well, relaxation, like meditation, these are all interesting, I would say relatively untested, but I say go for it, things, because what they're trying to do is enroll your body in the feedback process. So whether it's yoga, swimming while you're thinking about some of these things and trying to soothe your body while you're, engaged in it. Biofeedback is a way to try to get your body to settle down. Again, the heart rate thing. What?
Play therapy.
Play therapy. Play therapy is a classic child technique where basically children use dolls or models to displace their experience onto dolls, and they'll tell you all about their fantasy life. So basically, because it's not about them. The classic story at Mass Mental Health Center was a young man who I did not treat, but I was at this case conference, and I'll never forget it. This was a young boy. I'm going to say he was 11 or 12. And he would write a thing called That Man. That man, who was a doll or a G.I. Joe action figure, would drink and cuss and hit. And that man was this, and that man drank, and that man had alcohol bottles, and that man. And the therapist basically said, you know, this is his father. Maybe sooner or later I should say, it's your father. It was just an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I was just a kid. I was just given that beeper, right, to do restraints. I went to the world's most famous place. I thought I'd learn something. And he said, well, you know, that man is your father. And the boy looked at him straight in the eye and said, my father's a minor league baseball player. The kid, nothing to do with that. And he had a different image for his father. It was basically too much to integrate at that time. But he could get some of this out, and basically the therapist could work with it in this displaced play space. Hard to prove that that's effective, but it's a technique that makes the child feel safe enough to reveal what's going on, and then you can talk about what it's like for the person living with that man. How would the person living with that man cope? What does the person living with that man have to do? Does that make some sense? I mean, play therapy, that's a very interesting thing. Some adults, this is getting into art and drawing. It's the creative, it's getting past the cognitive stuff, trying to get to the big three through art, creativity, play, all the nonverbal right brain stuff. That's what you're trying to recruit. The right brain doesn't do language. The right brain does not do language. So it does drawing. It's connected to the feeling part. Actually, when I do this next time, I'll do right brain and left brain. That's a good suggestion. Yes?
I was wondering what NAMI thinks about trauma-informed care models.
NAMI is coming along. The question is, what does NAMI think about trauma-informed care models? I can tell you that NAMI has been about the same as the field, which is somewhat slow to pick this up, but I think they're getting it. Their leadership on restraint and seclusion cannot be underestimated. NAMI really rocks on restraint and seclusion, and restraint and seclusion is all about trauma-informed care. And so I would say, what's that? One aspect. It's a big aspect, though.
Yeah, it's huge. It covers everything that everybody does.
Exactly. But, you know, NAMI has this very interesting history about being blamed for children's mental illness. You know, so everybody's very mindful. Well, but that's the history. That was the history. The mothers were blamed for the children's schizophrenia. They were horrified, and my profession should be absolutely disgraced that they ever cooked up a very bad idea. So now the whole question is, can people have trauma histories, and does that mean it's the parent's fault? So now NAMI's trying to get to a more sophisticated place, that some trauma happens outside of the family, that sometimes the family is the most important agent, but inadvertently traumatizes somebody, that things happen and life happens. So I have a more kind of holistic story. There are stories where some families do abuse kids, and that has post-traumatic implications. And, you know, that's just one truth. It's not the average NAMI family, but it is a truth. And I've seen it in my practice, and I've seen it in my travels. So we're going to talk about borderline personality disorder this afternoon, which is another topic I'm not an expert on. But I did write a brochure on that one, so I got a chance. And we'll talk a little bit about the role of trauma and abuse in that diagnosis, which seems to be responsible for a very large percentage of the risk of people getting into these dysregulated states. And this is where PTSD and borderline are similar. People aren't able to modulate the big three very easily. They fly into rages, they get despairing, the feelings overwhelm them, they block out their whole cognitive perspective, they lose a sense of the future, they become suicidal, they turn all their upset inward, it's my fault. That's what suicide is, right? I'm going to murder someone at me because I am bad. I mean, it's rage basically turned inward, I think. I mean, I think that's the most, yes? Oh, the big three is Brooke, who's your amygdala. Brooke had the role of saying, this is unsafe, we're going to die, my life is threatened. And the other dynamic duo here, who I started out as hugging because I wanted to enroll them, but then I pulled a fast one. And in fact, they're responsible for all emotional or limbic activity in the middle part of the brain. So hugging, fear, terror, right, sadness, all the emotional sense. And so in a trauma situation, just for those of you who came late, the big three are the terror response, I'm going to die, and the emotional part of the brain, which then blocks out your cognitive strategies, which could say, that guy was a bad driver, it's not about me. To give an easy example of the mild trauma. Yes?
Okay, and the other, one of the other ones is, who cares, I haven't seen NAMI blamed.
NAMI was blamed by...
Who cares about blame?
Well, the moms did when the psychiatrists were, leaning on them and saying, well, obviously, your lack of motherhood is driver for the schizophrenia. I mean, I'm telling you, this was my field. I was trained by some of those guys. I was not trained that it was true, but it's incredibly devaluing. It's like the gentleman who was a Vietnam vet who was treated poorly upon his return. These mothers were trying to love their children who have a biologically based disorder. The doctors are blaming them for the condition, which is hooey. So, to me, this is one of the great disgraces of my field, and this is why, my field's got a long way to go. Yes?
Going. And
what?
But you're going.
We're going. NAMI's moving ahead. Mo Armstrong's one of my buddies.
Good.
Mo's the man. And probably if you had him out to Montana?
You remind me of him.
Oh, really? Well, that's quite a compliment, because Mo's really probably the most forward-thinking consumer person, like in terms of changing the world. And he started this whole program called Vet to Vet, which is he's trying to get like a NAMI kind of family-to-family, peer-to-peer in our own voice model to vets so that they don't have to feel so isolated. A couple more questions, Gary. Gary, how many burritos and how much time?
We got about 3 dozen burritos still left.
2 minutes? 3 minutes? 3 dozen burritos. All right, we're going to take these 3 questions. So everybody else, put your hands down. You can get me in the afternoon. We'll talk about borderline personality disorder. So 1, 2, 3. Let's just do it. Right brain and music. Yes. Well, can music therapy help people with these sort of things? It's a very interesting question. Surely. Is there an EMDR strategy that employs music? But basically, the right brain doesn't do words, right? So it's closer to, if you can't find your way, through downtown Missoula, that's a right brain function. If you have a talent for music, that's a right brain function. My field has not been very creative or holistic in integrating sort of right brain creativity and art into healing practices. I'll just tell you that, right? We tend to do symptoms, medications, right? We do all that stuff. That's all fine. Evidence-based, there's science behind it. But I think that's I would say that's uncharted waters and very interesting. The healing power of music. And I think that's happening outside of psychiatry. But that doesn't mean it's not awesome. So I can't give you a coherent answer, but maybe, the Mahalishes could have somebody in the future come who could talk about the healing power of music. Because that's not an area I know, but I know there's something there. I just can't, there's not much of a scientific literature on it. So 1, 2, 3. Yes? Yes. Yes. This is a question on restraint and seclusion. Does NAMI have materials to change the world? The answer is yes.
Well, the thing is that here in Montana, states seem to have a problem with
They use them a lot. In the jails and the prisons, interesting, this of course is a real growth stock, I'm sorry to say, in our field, and we have to start to shift our focus from hospitals and correctional settings, right? We can't give up on the hospitals, but as hospital beds go down across the country, correctional beds are going up. That seems to be a tragic American trend. So NAMI has some very nice materials for restraint and seclusion, teaching and advocacy within legislature, but I think a lot of it isn't legislative, although legislature can help. A lot of it is leadership and clarity of purpose. Leadership makes the difference. We reduced restraints by 65% when I was the medical director of Massachusetts with no money. No money. We told them, don't do it. Then we said, here's some alternatives. What can you think of? And then we got this hospital come up with the occupational therapy soothing room. And this hospital came up with the music room. And this hospital came up with this. And they were all presenting to each other. Then when I was a commissioner, I gave them all awards. Right? I did. I gave them every single one of them. I gave them a big award, made a big deal out of it. We had no money. We had a $30 million budget cut when I was a commissioner, which is a whole other trauma story I can tell you about. For me, it was very traumatic. This is my life work, and I took the job when nobody else wanted it because they wanted to close the Department of Mental Health in Massachusetts. So that's a whole other story. That was Mitt Romney, by the way. Just FYI, I'm not a political person. Mitt Romney handed us, I'm telling you, the first day I was the acting commissioner, because the commissioner resigned because she knew this was going to be bad. There was a $1 billion budget deficit in human services alone. I can't tell you this. $22 billion budget, right? So $11 billion of it is human service, 10% cut. Massachusetts Department of Mental Health is $600 million. It's a tremendously big operation. They wanted to give me a $30 to $60 million cut. So I'm just going to tell you the story. It's a true story. I was very traumatized. The organizational chart comes out, right? And there's a DMA, which is the Department of Mental Retardation. DMA is how you say it in Boston. You know, there's DMA, there's DSS, there's corrections, and there's public health. I raised my hand. I don't know any of these guys. I didn't go to St. Margaret's with the commissioner of DMI. I didn't. You know, when my father gets psychotic when I was in second grade, he was a Chef Boyardee salesman who got transferred to Michigan. That's why I went to the University of Michigan. I go to football games, I have the fight song, why I'm a polite driver. That's all my Michigan roots. No. Then I went back to Philadelphia to get to know my older brother who didn't leave when my father was transferred. And then I moved to Boston to go to Harvard to learn from all these people who had some great ideas and some really dumb ideas. Right? So that's like my little geographic story. But basically, I didn't know any of these guys. But I was a doctor. And I raised my hand and I said, where's the Department of Mental Health on this organizational chart? And they said, oh, we won't be having a Department of Mental Health. I can't make this up. I went into the bathroom and I had a wave of nausea. I looked at myself and I said, this is the worst first day I've ever had at any job. I'm not kidding. It's a true story. And basically what I did is I activated NAMI. Things got a lot better. And I can tell you about, you know, creative sociopathy in the service of a mission, which is an advanced topic. Because I pretended to close a state hospital that I knew couldn't be closed so that I didn't get any budget cuts in the community. And the people at that state hospital still don't like me, and I had to play it straight. But of course, they fought back, because Worcester State Hospital has tried to have been closed 8 times. The Romney administration was too arrogant to know that, and said basically, let's close that damn hospital. So they said, I can't make this up. And I said, you know, that might be a good idea, and if you don't give me any cuts on the community side, which parens would kill people, close parens, you know, why don't we take that hospital on? I, of course, like history. Remember that? In the beginning of the story? Worcester Hospital, people tried to close it 6 or 7 times. Those arrogant guys in Boston with all the money and Fenway Park and the State House and all the fancy Back Bay homes, they're trying to close Worcester, which is a working class city, right? Those bastards in Boston are trying to take our jobs away. What do? They fight back. I go up in meetings, I can't tell you, I'm really sorry to inform you, the Department of Mental Health decided to close Worcester State Hospital. I'm telling you, that's what I did. They still don't like me at Worcester State Hospital. But I had to do it. I had to scare them in order to save the budget. And it wasn't closed, and then I resigned. Then I became NAMI's medical director. Come on! So basically, I felt like I got away with the greatest shooting match of all time. But I will tell you something. This is just one observation from one politician. I'm not really going to give you a political spiel. We got to work with whoever we get. Mitt Romney wanted to close the Department of Mental Health. I'm just going to tell you that. So I don't think it was an anti-mental health thing, but I think it was a lack of sophistication about what it means to people. And what's that? Oh, it was very high risk. It was like all-in Texas Hold'em. Let's pretend to close this state hospital, only I have to tell you something. And this is like something I've wrestled with my conscience. I actively deceived the governor of Massachusetts because I knew that it would kill people to do what he wanted to do. And so all I can say is I'm done with public service on that. I'm done, man. I am done. But now I know what the commissioners know. So we did the grading of the states report. I don't know if you know about that report. Yeah, you take a look at it. It's very interesting, and I'm not sure we did Montana really justice because you're a poor state and a rural state, so you're never going to do well on some of these things. We have to try to correct that. Maybe you can help me with that in the afternoon because you have 5 PAC teams and a great NAMI. It should have been reflected more in that. But anyway, I knew what the commissioners were up to and what they were up against, so I know all the questions to ask. So they don't like me either. Anyway, well, I think I'll stop there, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Ken will take a nap so he can do PTSD.